Imagine standing at the altar, ready to marry the person you thought was your forever, only to discover a heartbreaking betrayal that shatters your world. This is the story of Emily from Kansas, a woman whose wedding night turned into the darkest moment of her life, but also the beginning of an incredible journey of strength, healing, and a love she never expected. Stay with me because this story will break your heart, then mend it all over again. Welcome to Voice of Granny. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment where you're watching from. When I look back at the way my life unfolded, it still feels like a story someone else lived, not me. I grew up in a small town in Kansas, where everyone seemed to know each other's business and where dreams often felt both too big and too far away. I was the kind of girl who believed in happy endings, the kind who held on to the hope that love could conquer anything. Maybe that's why I fell so hard for Mark. He wasn't the first boy I had ever liked, but he was the first who made me believe in forever. Mark had that easy charm people in small towns seem to carry. He could make anyone laugh, and when he looked at me, I felt like I was the only girl in the room. At first, our relationship was simple, like something out of a country song. Late-night drives on empty roads, talking about everything and nothing. Summer evenings at the lake, holding hands, watching the sun go down. He'd say things like, "Emily, you're the only person who really gets me," and I'd believe it. I thought he saw me the way I saw him, like we were two pieces meant to fit together. Sarah, my best friend since middle school, was always part of our lives too. She was the kind of friend who knew all my secrets, all my dreams, and even the silly little fears I never said out loud. She was bold where I was quiet, fearless where I was cautious. When I told her about Mark in those early days, she smiled wide and said, "He's good for you, Em. I can see it." I trusted her. I trusted them both. Maybe too much. By the time I was in my mid-20s, Mark proposed. It wasn't some grand gesture you'd see in a movie. We were sitting at a little diner just off the highway, eating burgers and fries, when he pulled a small velvet box out of his pocket. He opened it right there, his hands shaking, and said, "Emily, I don't ever want to imagine my life without you. Will you marry me?" My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. I said yes with tears in my eyes, and the whole diner clapped when they realized what had happened. That night, when I called Sarah to tell her the news, she screamed with excitement. "Oh my God, Em! You're going to be a bride. This is the start of everything." The months that followed were a blur of wedding planning, endless lists, and late-night talks about our future. Sarah became my maid of honor, and she threw herself into the role like it was her own dream come true. She went dress shopping with me, helped me pick out flowers, and even dealt with my mom when the stress got too high. I remember thinking how lucky I was to have both of them. Mark, the man I loved, and Sarah, the friend who felt like family. As the big day got closer, I felt both excitement and nerves. Marriage is a big leap, and though I had my doubts in quiet moments, little whispers that maybe Mark wasn't always as present as I wanted him to be, that sometimes his eyes seemed to drift somewhere else, I brushed them aside. Everyone gets cold feet, I told myself. Everyone feels a little shaky before forever begins. The wedding day itself was beautiful, like something out of a dream. The Kansas sky stretched wide and endless above us, the sun casting a golden glow over the fields. My family and friends filled the church, their faces shining with happiness. When I walked down the aisle, wearing a white dress I had once only imagined, Mark stood waiting at the altar, smiling at me like I was the only thing in the world that mattered. My father squeezed my hand before letting me go, whispering, "This is your moment, Em. Take it." And I did. The ceremony passed in a blur. Vows, rings, a kiss that felt like a promise. Everyone clapped and cheered, and I felt like my life was finally beginning. We danced at the reception, surrounded by laughter and love. Sarah gave a speech that made me cry, talking about how she had watched me grow, how she had seen the way Mark and I looked at each other, and how she knew we were meant to be. In that moment I felt safe, felt sure. That night, when the party wound down and the guests left, I thought the happiest chapter of my life was just starting. Mark and I checked into the little bed and breakfast we had booked for our wedding night. I was nervous but excited, ready to step into marriage with him. But as the hours passed, something strange happened. Mark seemed restless, distracted. He said he was going to grab a drink of water, but when he didn't come back right away, I started to wonder. At first, I thought maybe he needed a moment alone, maybe the day had overwhelmed him. But as the minutes turned into longer stretches, a knot began forming in my stomach. I slipped out into the hallway, the wooden floor creaking under my steps. That's when I heard it, a faint laugh familiar in a way that made my chest tighten. I followed the sound down the corridor, my heart pounding harder with every step. When I opened the door at the end of the hall, the world I knew shattered in an instant. There they were, Mark and Sarah, together. Not in some innocent way, not in a way that could be explained away. It was betrayal in its rawest form, painted across their faces when they saw me standing there. My best friend, my new husband, the two people I trusted most in the world, destroying me on the very night my life was supposed to begin. I can't fully describe the silence that followed. It wasn't just the lack of sound, it was the way everything inside me went quiet, numb. Sarah's face turned pale, and she opened her mouth as if to speak, but no words came out. Mark reached toward me, his voice breaking as he said, "Emily, wait, it's not what it looks like." But I knew exactly what it was. My knees felt weak, my chest heavy. It was as if the floor had given out beneath me, and I was falling into a place I didn't recognize. In that moment I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just turned and walked away. My feet carried me out of the building, down the empty street, and into the cool Kansas night. The stars above me blurred through my tears, but I kept moving because if I stopped, I knew I'd collapse. All I could think was, how could they do this to me? How could the two people I loved most rip my heart out like this? That was the night everything changed. The night I lost not just a husband, but a friend, a future, and the version of myself who still believed in forever. The night I walked out of that room, I felt like I was walking out of the life I had been building for years. The cool Kansas air hit my face, and I remember thinking how unfair it was that the world could look so calm when my heart was breaking into pieces. The sky was still the same, the quiet streets looked unchanged, but inside me, everything had shifted. I didn't go back to the bed and breakfast. Couldn't. The thought of walking into that building again, of facing them, made me sick. Instead, I kept walking. I didn't even know where I was going at first, I just needed distance. My white dress trailed behind me, the hem catching dirt from the road, but I didn't care. All I wanted was to escape the betrayal that was still burning fresh in my mind. After some time, I found myself at my parents' house. My mom opened the door, her face lighting up at first, thinking I was coming to share wedding joy, but then her smile faded when she saw the look on my face. "Emily, honey, what happened?" she asked softly. I couldn't hold it in anymore. The tears poured down as I whispered, "He and Sarah." My voice broke and I couldn't even finish the sentence. My mom pulled me into her arms before I collapsed on the porch. She held me the way she did when I was a child after a nightmare, rocking me gently, whispering that she was there, that it was going to be okay. My dad came to the door, confused at first, then angry when he realized what had happened. I could see his jaw tighten, his hands clench into fists, but all he did was pull me inside and sit me down. The next morning the whole family knew. My cousins, my aunts, my uncles, they had all been at the wedding, celebrating what they thought was the beginning of something beautiful. Now they sat around our kitchen table, their faces heavy with disbelief and anger. Some of them cursed Mark's name. Others shook their heads, unable to believe Sarah could do something so cruel. For me it was like living in a fog. I heard their voices, but it felt distant, muffled, like I was underwater. Eventually the calls started coming. First from Mark, then from Sarah. I ignored them. I couldn't bear to hear their voices. Then came the messages. Long texts filled with excuses, explanations, and pleas for me to talk. Mark said he had been drinking too much, that it was a mistake, that it meant nothing. Sarah wrote that she didn't know how it happened, that she hated herself, that she didn't want to lose me as a friend. But their words felt empty. Nothing they said could erase the image burned into my mind, the two of them together in that room. A few days later, Mark showed up at my parents' doorstep. My dad was the one who answered the door, and I could hear his voice rising from the kitchen. "You've got some nerve coming here," he barked. Mark tried to push his way inside, saying he just wanted to see me to explain, but my dad wouldn't let him. "She doesn't need your explanations. She needs space," he said firmly before shutting the door in his face. I sat at the kitchen table, trembling, listening to every word. Part of me wanted to run out and scream at him, demand answers, but the other part of me just wanted him gone. The following week should have been our honeymoon. We had planned a trip to Colorado, to the mountains we'd always dreamed of visiting together. Instead, I spent my days in my childhood bedroom, blinds closed, struggling to get out of bed. Food had no taste. Music, once a comfort, felt like noise. Nights were the hardest. I would lie awake, my mind replaying the moment I opened that door, the way Mark's face looked when he realized I had seen him, the guilt in Sarah's eyes. It was like a film on repeat that I couldn't shut off. People around town started whispering too. In a place like Kansas, word travels fast. I couldn't even go to the grocery store without feeling eyes on me, pity in their looks, or hearing bits of conversation behind my back. "Did you hear what happened at Emily's wedding? I can't believe Sarah would do that. Poor Emily, she didn't deserve that." Their sympathy should have comforted me, but instead it made me feel exposed, raw, like everyone was picking at my wounds. Eventually, I decided I had to face it head-on. I couldn't hide forever. So I agreed to meet with Mark one last time, not because I wanted him back, but because I needed closure. We sat at a cafe on Main Street, the same place we had gone so many times before when we were happy. But this time, the air between us was heavy, thick with everything unsaid. He looked rough, like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes were red. His hands shook slightly as he stirred his coffee. "Emily," he began, his voice low, "I made a terrible mistake. I don't even know why it happened. It didn't mean anything. I was drunk, I wasn't thinking. Please, don't throw everything away because of one night." His words stabbed at me, not because I believed them, but because of how shallow they sounded. One night. One night had destroyed everything. I looked at him, really looked, and for the first time I didn't see the man I had fallen in love with. I saw a stranger. Someone who had been willing to risk my heart, my trust, our future, for a moment of weakness. "Mark," I said, my voice steadier than I expected, "you didn't just make a mistake. You chose to betray me. On our wedding night. You don't come back from that. I can't come back from that." His eyes filled with tears, and he reached across the table for my hand, but I pulled it away. The finality in that moment hit me like a wave. Whatever we had was gone. After that, I blocked his number. Blocked Sarah too. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, cutting off people who had been such a huge part of my life, but I knew I had to if I wanted to heal. It was like tearing off a bandage that had been stuck for too long. Painful but necessary. The weeks turned into months, and slowly I began to rebuild. I threw myself into work, into small projects that gave me a sense of control. I spent more time with my family, who never let me forget that I was loved, even when I felt unworthy of it. Friends who truly cared about me showed up in quiet ways, dropping off meals, sending messages just to check in, inviting me out when I didn't feel like leaving the house. Their kindness reminded me that not everyone betrays you, that not everyone lies. Still, the wound was deep. There were days I thought about Sarah, about how she had once been like a sister to me, and I wondered if I would ever understand why she did it. There were nights I dreamed about Mark, not in a longing way, but in the sense that my mind couldn't let go of the ghost of what we were supposed to be. Healing wasn't a straight line. Some days I felt strong, ready to move forward, and other days I felt shattered all over again. But through it all, one truth slowly began to settle in my heart. I had survived. They had broken my trust, but they hadn't broken me completely. I was still here, still breathing, still capable of finding a life beyond the pain. And though I didn't know what the future held, I promised myself one thing, that I would never again ignore the whispers in my heart, that I would never again settle for someone who couldn't honor my love. That promise was the seed of something new. At the time I didn't know it, but it was the beginning of the next chapter of my life, one that would teach me what love really means. Time has a strange way of moving after heartbreak. Some days feel endless, like every minute is dragging you through mud, and other days vanish in a blink, leaving you wondering where they went. For me, the months after leaving Mark and Sarah behind were like that. Slow in my pain but fast in the way the world kept turning whether I was ready or not. At first, I tried to keep myself busy just so I wouldn't think too much. I picked up extra hours at work. I started helping my mom in her garden again, pulling weeds, planting flowers, letting the dirt ground me when my thoughts felt too heavy. Sometimes I even joined my dad on his early morning fishing trips, not because I loved fishing, but because the quiet out on the water helped me breathe again. But even in the busyness, there were moments where the silence was too loud. Nights especially. Nights were when the loneliness crept in, when the bed felt too big and my heart replayed every moment I wanted to forget. I'd find myself staring at the ceiling, whispering, "Why wasn't I enough? What did I do wrong?" It took me a long time to understand that their betrayal wasn't about me. It was about them. Still, understanding it didn't erase the hurt. One of the hardest parts was losing Sarah. She hadn't just been my best friend. She had been my other half in so many ways. We shared secrets, laughter, inside jokes that no one else got. And then, in one night, all of that was gone. Sometimes I'd catch myself reaching for my phone to text her about something funny, only to remember that she wasn't that person for me anymore. The grief of losing a friend, I realized, was just as heavy as losing love. Little by little, though, life began to shift. It wasn't sudden and it wasn't easy, but there were small signs that healing was happening. One day, I woke up and realized I hadn't cried the night before. Another day, I drove past the cafe where I had met Mark for the last time, and my chest didn't ache as much as it once had. Healing didn't mean forgetting, but it meant the pain was losing its grip on me. My job became a place of refuge. I worked at a small marketing firm in town, and while it wasn't glamorous, it gave me something to focus on. I started staying late to finish projects, not because I had to, but because it gave me purpose. My boss noticed and began trusting me with bigger responsibilities. For the first time, I felt like I was building something for myself, not for anyone else. That feeling was new, and it mattered more than I realized. It was during one of those long weeks at work that I met David. He wasn't like Mark at all. Where Mark was loud and charming, David was quiet and steady. He worked as a graphic designer, and his desk was a few rows down from mine. I had seen him around, but we'd never really talked beyond polite small talk. That changed one evening when we were the last two left in the office. I was struggling with a project that just wouldn't come together, and I must have been more frustrated than I thought because David walked over and said gently, "You look like you could use a hand." I almost brushed him off. I wasn't used to accepting help anymore, but there was something in his tone, calm and sincere, that made me pause. He pulled up a chair, looked over my work, and within minutes, he had found a solution I hadn't seen. I remember staring at him, surprised, and saying, "How did you do that so fast?" He smiled, a small, almost shy smile, and said, "Sometimes it just takes a fresh pair of eyes." That moment stayed with me. Not because of what he did, but because of how he did it. No grand gestures, no trying to impress me, just quiet kindness. Over the weeks that followed, we started talking more. At first, it was casual, work-related conversations, comments about the weather, light jokes about our boss's obsession with coffee. But slowly, those small talks turned into longer ones. He'd ask about my weekend, I'd ask about his family, and little by little, I realized I was looking forward to those moments with him. Still, I was cautious. My heart was scarred, and the last thing I wanted was to fall into something too quickly. But David never pushed. He seemed to understand without me having to say it. He was patient, letting our friendship grow naturally. He never made me feel like I had to be someone else. I could sit with him in silence, and it felt comfortable instead of awkward. That was new for me. One evening, after a long day at work, David and I ended up leaving the office at the same time. The sun was setting, painting the Kansas sky in shades of pink and orange. As we walked to our cars, he turned to me and said, Emily, can I ask you something? I nodded, unsure. Would you like to grab dinner sometime? Just as friends, if that's what you're comfortable with. His words caught me off guard. Not because of the question itself, but because of the way he asked. Without pressure, without expectation. Just an open door I could choose to walk through. For a moment, fear rose in me. The memory of betrayal whispered, "Don't trust anyone. Don't open your heart again." But another part of me, the part that was slowly learning to heal, whispered back, maybe it's okay to take a small step. So I said yes. And that yes, though simple, felt like a victory. We went to a little diner, the kind where the waitresses know your name and the pie is always fresh. We talked for hours, not just about work but about life. He told me about his childhood, how he grew up on a farm not far from town, how he loved drawing as a kid. I told him about my family, about how I used to write stories in journals when I was younger. We laughed, we shared, and for the first time in a long time I felt light. That night as I drove home, I realized something important. I wasn't in love with David, not yet, but I felt safe with him. And maybe, after everything I had been through, safety was the foundation I needed to start over. Over the next few months, our friendship deepened. We went on walks, watched movies, and sometimes just sat in comfortable silence. He never rushed me, never asked for more than I could give. And slowly, without even realizing it, I began to trust again. One night, sitting under the wide Kansas sky, stars scattered like diamonds above us, David turned to me and said softly, "Emily, I don't know what you've been through, but I want you to know, I'll never be someone who hurts you." His words sank deep into my heart. I didn't reply right away, but inside I felt something shift. For the first time since my wedding night, I felt hope. Hope that maybe love wasn't all betrayal and pain. Hope that maybe, just maybe, there was someone out there who could love me the way I deserved. And sitting beside David, I realized that my story wasn't over. It was just beginning again, in a way I never expected. Life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. If someone had told me in those dark nights right after my wedding, that one day I would laugh again, that I would sit across from a man and feel peace instead of fear, I would have shaken my head and said, "Not me. Not after what I've been through." But slowly, day by day, David began to prove me wrong. Being with him wasn't like being with Mark. With Mark, I always felt like I had to hold my breath, like I was trying to keep up with a storm that could change directions at any moment. But with David it was different. With him I could exhale. There was a calm in the way he listened, in the way he spoke, in the way he never tried to rush me into anything I wasn't ready for. He wasn't trying to dazzle me, and yet somehow he did, just by being steady, just by being kind. At first I kept reminding myself that we were just friends. It felt safer that way, like I could keep my heart tucked away where no one could hurt it. But as the weeks turned into months, it became harder to ignore the truth. I looked forward to his calls. I found myself smiling when I thought about him. And sometimes, when our hands brushed accidentally, a spark lit inside me that I hadn't felt in years. One evening, after we had gone out for dinner, David walked me to my car. The air was cool, the Kansas sky painted with 1,000 stars. He hesitated for a moment, then said softly, "Emily, I know you've been through a lot. I don't want to push you, but I need to tell you something. Care about you. More than just a friend." His voice was steady, but I could see the nervousness in his eyes. My heart pounded. Part of me wanted to run, to protect myself from the possibility of being hurt again. But another part of me, the part that had been healing, the part that had slowly started to believe in hope again, leaned toward him. "David," I whispered, "I'm scared. I don't know if I can go through heartbreak again." He reached out, gently taking my hand. "Then we'll go slow," he said. "As slow as you need. I'm not here to rush you, Emily. I'm here to walk with you, one step at a time." Tears stung my eyes, not from sadness but from the overwhelming relief of knowing there was someone who saw me, who understood my brokenness and didn't turn away. In that moment, I realized I was ready to let love back in. Not the kind of love I had once believed in, the whirlwind fairy tale kind, but a quieter, deeper love built on trust. As our relationship grew, I began to see myself differently too. I wasn't just the girl who had been betrayed. I was stronger than I had ever imagined. I had rebuilt my life from ashes, and now I was creating something new. With David by my side, I found joy in the little things again. Cooking dinner together, laughing at silly jokes, driving with the windows down and the music up. Life felt simple, but it felt full. But just when I thought I had finally moved past the shadows of my past, Mark reappeared. It was a Saturday afternoon. I had gone to the local farmer's market with David, the two of us carrying bags of fresh vegetables and bread, laughing about how neither of us knew the first thing about baking. As we turned a corner, I froze. There he was, Mark, standing just a few feet away, looking older, thinner, with eyes that seemed heavy with regret. For a moment the world went silent. My chest tightened, memories rushing back like a flood I wasn't ready for. Mark's eyes widened when he saw me, and he took a hesitant step forward. "Emily," he said, his voice hoarse. David noticed immediately, his hand gently squeezing mine, grounding me. Mark glanced at him, then back at me, a flicker of something, jealousy maybe, passing over his face. "Can we talk?" he asked, desperation in his tone. Part of me wanted to turn and walk away. Another part of me, the part that still carried scars, knew I needed to face him. I looked at David, and he gave me a small nod, silently telling me he would support whatever I chose. So I agreed to meet Mark later that week, not alone, but in a public place where I felt safe. We sat across from each other in a quiet cafe, the same one where I had once told him goodbye. This time the air between us felt even heavier. Mark looked worn down. His hands fidgeted. His eyes darted around before finally settling on me. "Emily," he began, "I've spent every day since that night regretting what I did. I was a fool. I lost the best thing that ever happened to me. I thought about you every single day. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm begging you. Give me another chance." His words should have moved me once. There was a time when hearing him say those things would have broken me, would have made me question everything. But as I listened, all I felt was clarity. I thought about the girl I had been on our wedding night, broken and trembling as I walked away into the dark. I thought about the nights I had cried myself to sleep, the days I had wondered if I would ever be whole again. And then I thought about the woman I had become, the one who had rebuilt her life, the one who had found strength she didn't know she had, the one who was learning what real love looked like. I shook my head slowly. "Mark, you don't get to come back now and ask for another chance. You threw that away the moment you betrayed me. You made your choice and so did I. Choose me now. Choose peace. And I choose a life without you." His face crumpled, his eyes filling with tears. "Emily, please," he whispered. But I stood up, my voice firm. "Goodbye, Mark." Walking out of that cafe, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was the final closure I hadn't even realized I needed. I didn't look back. That night, I told David what had happened. He listened quietly, then pulled me into his arms. "I'm proud of you," he said softly. "You deserve the kind of love that never makes you question your worth." And for the first time I truly believed him. The morning after I told Mark goodbye, I woke up with a strange sense of lightness, as if I had been carrying a heavy backpack for years and had finally set it down. The air felt fresher. The sun through the window seemed brighter. Even the silence in my little home didn't feel lonely anymore. It felt peaceful. For the first time in a long time, I didn't wake up thinking about what I had lost. I woke up thinking about what I had gained. It wasn't just about David, though he was a big part of it. It was about me finally choosing myself, finally realizing that my worth wasn't tied to who stood beside me at an altar or who whispered promises into my ear. My worth was mine, and no betrayal could take that away again. David called that morning, his voice warm and steady as always. "How are you feeling?" he asked. I smiled, leaning back against my pillow. "Lighter," I said. "Like I finally closed a chapter one should have closed a long time ago." He was quiet for a moment, then said, "I'm glad. You deserve a whole new book, Emily. One filled with joy." His words stuck with me all day. Whole new book. That's what I was writing now. Not with pen and paper, but with the choices I made, the people I let into my life, the way I decided to love myself again. As the weeks went by, my relationship with David blossomed. We weren't in a rush. There was no grand timeline, no pressure. We let things unfold naturally, enjoying the small, ordinary moments that somehow felt extraordinary. Cooking together and laughing when we burned the garlic bread. Driving down Kansas backroads with the windows rolled down, singing off-key to old songs. Sitting in silence on the porch, just watching the sunset. Those little moments taught me something important. Love isn't about the big gestures. It's not about fairy tale weddings or grand declarations. It's about presence. It's about being there for each other in the quiet spaces, in the in-between. Mark had given me chaos, but David gave me peace. And peace was the thing my soul had been craving all along. One evening, months later, David and I went for a walk by the river. The water reflected the golden glow of the setting sun, and the air was filled with the sounds of crickets and distant laughter. He stopped suddenly, turning to me with that thoughtful look he always had when he was about to say something important. "Emily," he said softly, taking my hands in his. "I know where you've been, and I know how hard it's been to trust again. But I also know how strong you are. I want you to know, I love you. Not because of the pain you've survived, but because of who you are in spite of it. You make me want to be a better man." Tears welled in my eyes, not because I was sad, but because I had never felt so seen, so valued, so truly loved. My voice trembled, but I managed to whisper back, "I love you too, David. And this time, I know it's real." That night, as he wrapped his arms around me, I realized something. Love wasn't supposed to hurt. It wasn't supposed to make you question your worth. Real love felt safe, felt steady, felt like home. Looking back now, I sometimes think about that night when my life fell apart, when I walked away from the altar, leaving behind everything I thought my future would be. At the time, it felt like the end of the world. But what I didn't know then was that it was really the beginning of something greater. Sometimes life has to break you in order to rebuild you stronger. Mark's betrayal shattered me, but it also pushed me to find my own strength, to discover who I truly was without someone else defining me. And in the end, it led me to David, the kind of love I had always deserved but never thought I'd find. So if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Heartbreak is not the end of the story. It's just a chapter. And no matter how broken you feel, no matter how heavy the pain seems, there's always a chance for healing, for hope, for love. I once thought my life was over on that wedding night. But here I am, standing stronger, happier, and freer than I've ever been. And as I hold David's hand, I know this for certain. Sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings.